A routine traffic stop takes a shocking turn when a young police officer pulls over a black man, only to discover he's stopping a high-ranking police captain. At first, it seems like just another day on the job, but as tensions rise, it becomes clear that something deeper is at play. The officer, convinced he's acting by the book, doesn't realize his unconscious bias is leading him down a dangerous path. The captain, calm but firm, knows exactly what's happening, but will his badge be enough to change the outcome? As the situation escalates, bystanders begin to take notice, cameras start rolling, and the officer is faced with a choice that could change both of their lives forever. Will he recognize his mistake before it's too late? Or will his assumptions lead him down a path he never expected? Stay tuned. What happens next will leave you speechless. The officer tightens his grip on his belt as he scans the man in front of him. His voice is firm, his stance rigid. License and registration. The man in the driver's seat exhales slowly, reaching for his wallet with steady hands. "I'm Captain Harris. I work with the department," he says, keeping his tone measured. But the officer barely acknowledges his words, his eyes flicking toward the badge clipped to Harris' belt. For a moment, there's silence, thick, heavy. The officer glances back at his patrol car, as if debating his next move. The captain, still seated, watches closely. He's been here before, too many times to count. He knows how quickly things can spiral. Around them, a few pedestrians slow their steps, sensing something is off. The air crackles with unspoken tension. Then the officer reaches for his radio. Captain Harris stays still. He already knows this is far from over. The radio crackles, but the officer barely hears a response. His heartbeat is loud in his ears. Captain Harris remains calm, but there's something in his eyes, something the officer can't quite place. Authority, frustration, a warning? The crowd is growing. A man in a hoodie mutters, "This doesn't look right." Another whispers, "Why won't he just listen to him?" The phone cameras are everywhere now, capturing every move, every breath. The officer feels the weight of their stares, pressing against him, tightening the knot in his stomach. Captain Harris slowly raises a hand, not fast enough to startle, but enough to command attention. "Officer, I suggest you think carefully about what you're doing." His voice is steady, but there's an edge to it now. The officer swallows hard. His training tells him to stay in control. His pride tells him not to back down. But somewhere deep inside, a new thought creeps in. What if he's wrong? Before the officer can respond, a second patrol car pulls up, lights flashing. A senior officer steps out, his face tightening as he recognizes the man in the driver's seat. "Captain Harris." His tone is laced with surprise, but there's something else, concern. Captain Harris gives a small nod. "I was just trying to explain that to your officer." His voice is even, but his patience is wearing thin. The young officer shifts uncomfortably. He expected backup, but not this. The senior officer turns to him, lowering his voice. "Do you know who you just pulled over?" I was just following protocol," the officer stammers. But doubt is creeping in, fast and uncontrollable. The crowd watches, waiting for what comes next. Then, just when it seems like things might de-escalate, the radio crackles again. Another report coming in. The description of a suspect matches Captain Harris' car. The young officer's hand moves toward his holster. The air is thick with anticipation. One wrong move could change everything. The young officer tenses as the radio's words sink in. A suspect matching this vehicle. His pulse quickens. He glances at Captain Harris, doubt flickering in his eyes, but the weight of his training, the urgency drilled into him, pushes him forward. His fingers brush against his holster. Captain Harris exhales sharply. He sees it happening, the hesitation, the fear, the instinctive reaction. He raises his hands higher, his voice calm but firm. "Officer, think. Look at me. Look at my badge." The senior officer steps forward, placing a steady hand on the younger officer's arm. "Stand down." His voice carries authority, But there's urgency too. The suspect report is from another district. Different car, different person. The young officer freezes. His chest rises and falls in uneven breaths. Reality crashes over him like a wave. The weight of his mistake, his assumptions, it's all there, undeniable. Then, Captain Harris reaches into his pocket. The officer stiffens, but Harris only pulls out a small notebook. He flips it open and calmly jots something down before tearing out a page. He hands it to the officer. "My number. Call me when you're ready to talk." The officer looks at the paper in his hands, stunned. No anger, no lecture, just an open door. The senior officer nods at Captain Harris, an unspoken understanding passing between them. The crowd slowly disperses, whispers fading into the night. As Captain Harris drives away, the young officer stands frozen, the paper crumpling slightly in his grip. This was supposed to be a routine stop, but tonight, everything changed. The officer stands by his patrol car long after Captain Harris is gone, staring at the number in his hand. His mind replays every moment, the doubt, the tension, the near mistake. He thought he was doing his job, following protocol, but now he isn't so sure. Back at the station, the senior officer pulls him aside. "You need to think about what happened tonight," he says. "Not just what you did, but why." The words hit hard. The officer nods slowly, his thoughts heavy. Days later, he dials the number. His voice is hesitant but steady. "Captain Harris, I'd like to talk." On the other end, Harris listens, then responds, "I was hoping you would." It's not just a conversation, it's a lesson, a chance to change. And as the call continues, the officer realizes this wasn't just a traffic stop, it was a turning point.